Now introducing our next panel, Inspiring Future Scientists. What Does It Take? Moderated by Marcia Shields.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I am Marcia Shields, and here with our esteemed panelists, and we're going to have some fun and some insightful learning. I am a member of the board of Texas Biomedical Research Institute, and on behalf of my fellow directors, we welcome all of you here today for this Global Health Symposium. So our topic, inspiring future scientists. What does it take? Our esteemed panelists today are leaders in their respective fields, but also they're going to help us understand ways that we all can participate in broadening the visions and providing experiences of young imaginations of the very students who could become soon our future scientists and world changers. So I'm going to, here's our structure, introduce the panelists. Each one of them will take several minutes to share some of their expertise, identify needs, and also some solutions. And then we will end up with a time for Q&A, so note your questions. We want to hear from you and enjoy that. So if it's okay, I'm going to start with introductions. Sitting next to me is Jean Russell, who's the Executive Director of the Centers for Applied Science and Technology. And here we just call it CAST. She began her non-traditional career in education as a teacher. Then she began to report on education as a journalist and later shifted into public policy work to improve not just the classroom, but the system of education. Her commitment to equity was shaped through early work in Oakland, in East Harlem, and in Central America, where she also learned the value of giving students ownership of their own learning. She's helped create many of San Antonio's outstanding signature education initiatives and is a member of the founding team that conceptualized CAST and then was named executive director of that growing network of schools. Next to Jean, we have Dr. Allison Wiesenthal, who's the chair of rehabilitative medicine at Brooke Army Medical Center, which we call BAMC. Dr. Wiesenthal is the first civilian, first female, and the youngest chair of the Department of Rehabilitation Medicine at BAMC, which is the military's largest and only level 1 trauma hospital. She's double board certified in internal medicine and palliative medicine. She fellowship trained at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City. She brought palliative care to the military in 2017, starting the Defense Department's first interdisciplinary palliative care service. She oversees the amazing Center for the Intrepid, rehabilitated wounded warriors and special operators. And she was just recognized as San Antonio Business Journal's top 40 under 40. Since the pandemic, Dr. Wiesenthal has served on the Pandemic Medical Operations Working Group of Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council and led their resiliency mission to support healthcare providers. Our third panelist today is Jim Perschbach, who is the president and CEO of Port San Antonio. Jim joined the Port in 2014 and leads a team that provides strategic support to grow advanced industries on their 1,900-acre technology innovation campus, which includes aerospace, cybersecurity, defense, manufacturing, and global trade. The Port is one of South Texas's fastest growing economic engines, is the home to over 80 tenant customers who employ more than 16,000 people and generate a regional economic impact of more than $5.6 billion. All right, enough about them. Let's hear from our panelists. So if we may, we'll begin with Jean.
Yes, can you hear me? Good morning, I'm Jean Russell, and I just want to sort of make some framing remarks. So I think when we talk about developing a scientific mindset in education, we have a tendency sometimes to shift towards compliance, and we really need to focus on curiosity. And so I want to make 3 points this morning. The first, I just came from City Hall, where some of our students from our Cass Med High School were receiving a commendation because they worked in their community on a diabetes prevention initiative that won a statewide honors. And so the point I'd like to make is that education must be hands-on. We're living in a world of chat, GPT, and AI, and I'm not afraid of those things, but I think that the more that we can have learning be hands-on, the things that make us different as human beings, we can see, oh, one of our students is right here, Aja Torres. And so she's one of the winning group that presented at the state and then this morning at City Hall. And the more we can make it relevant and meaningful and engaged in the community, so using the community as text, so solving a problem that the students identified in their own Southside community of social disparities regarding diabetes, and then what is a solution for that. So that's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is I think that thinking about becoming a scientist is part of identity formation. We really need to start at a younger age. We run career-themed high schools, but we also have a pre-K through 12 academy, and one of the reasons we did that was because of our recognition that you really do need to expose young people at a younger age to potential careers. People spend their whole lives education system is very focused on college readiness and preparing students for college, and I do believe in that. However, every child who leaves us will likely have a job at some point in their career, and do we spend the same time really helping young people understand what they may want to be long-term as a career? Do we put the same weight on that? And so recently I was chatting with one of our students at our engineering high school, and the way he put it was, other schools prepare students for college, Cass prepares young people to become adults. And then the last thing I want to say is we're having a dialogue in our state right now about school choice. And I don't want to weigh into those political waters, but I do want to say that for me, as a parent, it's important to me that I have some say in where my children go to school, and I run schools of choice. But what is really important to me is that we engage students in making choices about their decisions, about their learning. So at our schools, we build in this sort of constant decision making, whether it's about the courses you're taking, the pathways you're studying, the projects you're doing, the mentors or the internship opportunities, because that is how we move into graduated adulthood. And as a parent speaking now, I think that is what we all want for our children. We want that when they leave us, they're going to make good, informed choices, and what better place to happen than inside a school where they can be safely exposed to all that is possible. So those are my 3 points, and I'm going to pass the mic.
Thank you, Jean. Now we'll hear from Allison.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Jean. So like Jean was talking about with identity formation, so studies have shown that girls around as early as 3rd grade start losing confidence in their math and science skills. So it's really on us to dig into why that is and what are the external factors that these girls are seeing that make them think that that's not a field for them. So both of the people to my left and right are gratefully addressing the access issue, which is like get them exposed early on, and that identity formation that Jean was talking about, having that happen in those early stages. but we still need to worry, what are those external societal factors that are still making that confidence gap? So again, it's at like second grade, third grade level where boys will start to say like, oh, I'm actually really good at math, and their scores will be the same as their female colleagues, but again, it's that confidence in their skill set. So how do we ensure our female students maintain that, especially at that young age, so we can get them into those positions later on in life? So in the United States, there are 46 federally funded research and development centers. I just want y'all to throw out some numbers. How many do you think are directed by women? Just throw out any number. There was actually a right answer, so two out of 46 are led by women. And most of the leadership positions that are given to women tend to be in non-STEM leadership roles. So it tends to be HR, so human resources, or DEI. So again, that non-STEM leadership role. So if we want to encourage female scientists moving forward, we need to put them in positions of leadership. So I gratefully work for a wonderful institution, Brooke Army Medical Center, and I have been placed in a role where hopefully other people can see like, oh, that's totally possible. But again, it's also on me to pull people up as well. So somebody called me and they were like, oh, I was told that you'd be a great mentor for me. And I had this moment that I was like, what could I possibly say that would help you at all? And so there's also that moment of imposter syndrome where oh, I got here by accident, or oh, they needed a token female, so here I am. But also, if you are a female leader, embracing that and saying no, I really do have the skills that it takes to be here. I am here because, I have this list of credentials behind me that speaks to what I can do now and what I am doing now. And then honoring that and pushing that forward for other female, whether it's a colleague or a subordinate down the line, just really making that effort. So I'll talk a little bit about mentorship and sponsorship. So sponsorship is something all of us can do. Sometimes men worry oh, how would I be a good mentor for her? There's so many, things that are unique to being female that, wouldn't really meld. So she probably needs a female mentor. You can be a sponsor. So a sponsor means something there's a speaking engagement for Texas Biomed. I think you'd be great for it. I'm going to put your name forward. These are the things that I think you speak well to. Speaking engagements are what I think of because it's, important in medicine for our academic advancement to have invited talks. So it's something that I think about. But I encourage you to think in your field, what are ways you can sponsor your female colleagues or female subordinates to get to that next step? So I want to end with one last statistic, which is that women are currently 35% of STEM graduates. So I actually think that number is really good. So that means we're really only 15% away from parity. So I think, the programs that the people to my left and right are doing are really moving the needle. And again, working that leadership component at the end, I think is going to be important too, in making sure not only do we graduate STEM women, but we also promote them to the highest levels of leadership.
That is brilliant.
Thank you, Dr. Wiesenthal. Okay, Jim.
All right. Thank you all for having me here. I don't know why I'm on this stage. Y'all ever seen Kiss in concert? It's spectacular, right? Fireworks going off, lights. It's 8th grade poetry and 7th grade band music. And that's why I'm here. But there is something about it why I'm here. I know nothing about education. Jean knows that. She's taken me out to schools all over the country. I know nothing about medicine other than I'm terrified of doctors. But I know that one of the challenges is we live in a world that tells everybody everything is wrong. I mean, think about it. Everything you get is telling you that you can't succeed. Sometimes it's outright, sometimes it's buried in there. But nothing is that hard. Medicine is probably difficult, teaching is probably difficult, so I'll talk about something I know. You all know airplanes? Any bozo can fly an airplane. It is not that difficult. In fact, once you figure out that all you have to do is push a couple of buttons and sit back, it's really not that difficult. The challenge is people are told they can't do it. San Antonio has one of the largest concentrations of cyber professionals anywhere in the world. But every time they talk about cyber, what do they say? It's the best and the brightest. We need to get these STEM kids and do it. When I first got the job down at Port San Antonio, went out to a whole bunch of neighborhood association meetings. My good friend, mentor, Paco in the back took me because he knows every one of those neighborhoods. And we talked about what is going on here in San Antonio. And a really wonderful woman came up to me. And she said, Jim, you're doing the wrong thing. And I said, why? And you know what she said? She said, because none of those jobs you're talking about are jobs for the people in our community. You need to bring in warehouse jobs and factory jobs and people that our folks can do. And it's nonsense. So when you look at it, what we are doing at the port is nothing more than what KISS did. If you come down to Area 21, you can fly an FA-18. You can fly a 787. Simulator. We're not quite dumb enough to say you can go fly a real one. We have an eVTOL simulator, an electric vertical takeoff and landing. It's sitting right next to one of 2 surgical robots in the world on display. There is a cybersecurity simulator. There's a whole room of gaming computers. We brought in 100 kids the other week and just had them build their own gaming computer and take it home. And there is absolutely no front door to this. Because if you ask Jim, and I am a silly little metal guy, what I will tell you is the biggest challenge that we are facing, not just with education, but recruiting people to be bright people like yourselves, is people think they can't get there. And what we need to do, especially those of you in the room who have achieved this, is tell people that it's not that hard. Now, sure, it's difficult. Sure, there's a whole bunch of work you need to do. But show them first that the opportunity exists. And then when the doctor's talking about mentorship and sponsorship, help them get through that door. And we have some wonderful opportunities here in San Antonio. It's not just the people on the stage. I've looked at what some of y'all do because I know some people in the intelligence community, and you are doing amazing, amazing things. But we need to help tell that story. And so my only message up here today is if you do anything when you walk out of this room, make sure that you lead with what you do other people can do. Demystify it, and we open the door to greatness. Now, if this was really a good show, I'd have a blast pot going, but I couldn't find a parking spot, so my truck's off to the side.
Thank you, Jim. Well, while y'all are warming up your questions, get ready. I'll start with a few of them. Jean, so how do I engage younger students? We want to present opportunities, but what do we do? How do we engage them? Where do we find them?
So we were having a little chat just now about, we thought there's a huge trip right here to the Botanical Gardens. So I think one of the things that we really need to do is we need to throw open the doors of the school buildings and really be much more connected to the community. The community needs to come in and the students need to go out. I think that if I were going to plant a flag on anything in education, I would say we consistently underestimate young people. And so we need to stop doing that. It's a variation on what Jim's saying. Jim's working on the south side of San Antonio. All of our schools we have 6 are south of 410. We need to go out into the community, and it needs to be coalitions of educational organizations and community organizations, and this needs to be a community effort. I was recently at a conference and I was really inspired by some work I saw in the Valley that should speak to this audience because it was regarding health, but that whole community in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, the #1 high-paying, high-wage job is healthcare. There's not a lot of industry down there. So their whole community has rallied around how do we expose young people starting in the 4th grade, and it probably needs to be younger, to your point, to all of the potential jobs in the health sciences. We can do this, but it cannot be borne by schools alone, and we have no guarantee that young people are always going to find their way to schools like ours that are going to give them higher opportunities to connect. So this needs to be owned by the entire community, and it needs to start really young, and it needs to connect with community institutions.
Thank you. I agree.
That's great. Which is weird.
Allison, so you're an example of one of the few women at this stage in our social development of recognizing women in STEM who has made it to the top of the ranks of your profession and in a sense beat out the males who were trying to get those same positions. Tell us what you faced and what you needed to do to get where you are today, and also give us all advice on maybe some things we should look at doing ourselves or help somebody else do that we recognize has talent and should be there.
Thank you for the question, Marcia. I think that's an important point, which is that we recognize how we got to where we are so we can help bring others to that position. Yeah. And again, going back to what I talked about before, which is like ownership of the positive things that you have done yourself. So it's not just all kind of like, oh, I just tumbled in and I was randomly in the right place at the right time. And then 8 people died. Just kidding, nobody died. Then I got this job. So I would say the secret sauce for me is showing up. And what I mean by that is if there's a seat at the table, take it. So sometimes people come in and they'll sit at the perimeter and they'll stay quiet. And I sit at the table, a physical table, and I listen. And I get to know people individually and kind of learn like, oh, what do you do? And I listen to how they speak. So obviously I'm in rooms of very important, cool people. And I'm like, what of that can I take with me? Or when they say that, how did that land? So always using meetings, which some people just hate, and people laugh because they're like, Allison, you just love meetings. And I'm like, well, I just like the leather chairs and that they roll. I think it's nice. But I use meetings as an opportunity, like a leadership growth moment. So I use everything as like a leadership development, like, oh wow, the way that they spoke on that really resonated, and I could hear the room kind of being like, oh wow, that's a great idea. So it's like, how are people getting their ideas move forward? And then also always innovating, because everything doesn't always work. So being honest with yourself to be like, that didn't work, I'm gonna cut that one out of my repertoire, and not just constantly trying it over and over again to see if you'll get a different result. So to how I got there, I was the only female applicant in a string of 6 male candidates, all who were older than me, all who were active duty, and all who had like great experience levels. So, a challenge was that they all were my subordinate when I took on that role. So that was unique as well. So it's like, how do you engage the leadership of others who wanted your job? And I think, when you do get into leadership positions and, staying in the same company that you've been in, you will find yourself in this position. And I think it's all about finding that commonality in what was our whole goal in trying for this position. Like, what did we want? And then how can you distribute that leadership to them and engage them in moving things forward? So everybody's different in kind of what'll help them get to the next step, but I just really encourage you to show up and to be an interested party and use every meeting, no matter how droll or this again, the same agenda, I could repeat it to you verbatim right now, but using them as a way to learn from others and grow yourself as a leader every day.
Thank you. We can all do better. You're right. Jim, you already welcome young people to your campus. You've done a great job in developing Port SA. What are some of the barriers that you've had to overcome in mindset as well as in access to get young people to your campus and then to provide opportunities for them once they're there?
Well, the biggest barrier is everybody wants to create these perception barriers, and here's what I mean by that. When we wrote the Techport vision, there were some very brilliant minds that said, "You've got a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" And they said, "You don't have a gatekeeper at the front end. You don't have anything to weed out bad ideas before they start." And I said, "You're absolutely right. We don't want to weed out bad ideas." And they said, "Well, what are your lessons learned on the failures that are going to come out of this?" And I said, "I'd be shocked if there are a whole lot of failures that are coming out with the kids. If a third grader doesn't do something right, the world is not coming to an end." But this is the problem that we face as a society. And it is, I think, particularly prevalent with women. I'm not a woman and I don't know. But I can tell you it's prevalent with everybody. We like to look at things, and if it fails, or we think it fails, or we think it's a bad idea or a crazy idea, there are a million people that come out of the woodwork and tell you, you can't do it, it's stupid. And then there are a million people who want to whine about every problem that we are facing on this planet. We have known for 124 years now that you can transmit power wirelessly. Tesla was doing it in 1899 in Colorado. Freeman Dyson talked about putting satellites up in orbit and capturing as much power as you could possibly need to power a civilization with solar energy. And we've said for decades, you can't do it because it's way too expensive. Just don't even start. China has already launched a satellite to do that because we spend so much time in not just this country, but in our hemisphere saying you can't do it. Now, if you come down to our little museum, what you are going to see is a 3D printer. And it was put together by a group of 8th to 12th grade kids who are working with the same scientists to develop a program to use lunar basaltic rock to 3D print out a habitation. And if you go there, you can't talk to her anymore because she's graduated on from this. But a couple weeks ago, you would have seen a young lady named Denise. And Denise is a strange bird. I love Denise. She really, really loves space. Denise grew up not too far from the valley in a place where everybody told her that she can't accomplish anything. She got in with these folks at the Wex Foundation. And Denise has developed a sensor array that is going to be launched by the Australians, believe it or not, and put on the moon. Nobody told her she couldn't do it. Now, the good news is there's another young lady named Kate, and you can go down and talk to her, and she will tell you what this program is. And the reason I tell you this is because these barriers, it's not just with kids, it is with everybody. It's even with old Jimmy. Now, I was telling Gene, I've been listening to a lot of Rammstein lately. Y'all know Till Lindemann? You don't know Rammstein? After this, meet me. I'm going to introduce you to music. Till Lindemann is an East German poet, but he plays with a metal band and they blow the whole arena up. But here's my point about all of this. The world is going to tell you that everything is going to fail. They're going to tell you that every time you try something, it's not going to work. And they're going to laugh at you if you try something. Even old Jimmy here. We have added 7,000, 8,000 jobs to our campus in the past couple of years. We've doubled our top line and our bottom line. We built a facility that's brought in massive numbers of kids. And there are still people saying, but that doesn't work because what are your financial numbers on that center? And if that is happening to an ugly old guy like me, imagine what is happening to young people who are looking at it. And so to your answer about barriers, it's the same story. I'm just like Kiss, right? I'm going to use the same lyric over and over again for 10 years. You've got to tell people there is no harm in trying. Now, I'm not saying where it matters. Don't go out and do a surgery with some sort of crazy idea. But if it's an idea, give it a shot and give people encouragement. And if you do that, amazing things happen.
Thank you, Jim. All right, now we want to open up to questions, and I encourage you to, lady in the back, please.
I can use my teacher voice.
Well, the people online can't hear you, so you can use the microphone. Hopefully it works.
And if you are a teacher, thank you.
Yes.
I was a former teacher before I came to Texas Biomed for 19 years, and I taught science. And I feel like I should get like a 4-star general for teaching science in the pandemic. So I think as a teacher, Jim, I know you pointed out the barriers. I think as a teacher, we know what barriers are. We have 1,001 of them, and I could spend the rest of the day telling you what they are. But I think predominantly the biggest barrier is an administrator in instruction is the instruction itself, right? In our TEKS, which are standardized that we follow, viral infections or any type of infection prevention is mentioned only 4 times throughout K through 12. So I know it's insane. And it's really predominantly heavy when you get to biology in 9th grade. After that, it's really not even dabbled into. So it starts there. And I think that's one of our largest barriers. And unfortunately, when you teach at a public school system, it's very difficult to go outside of those standards because you have to teach to those standards. So I guess my question to anyone in the room or you guys is how can we pass that one particular barrier, right? Like I understand we have to trial and error, but once you're in the classroom and you've got to teach 7th graders about cell and molecular biology and so forth, but you can't go past that, what are one of those particular ways that we could actually go beyond that? And I'm not a teacher anymore, but I guess for all teachers. Is there any other teachers in the room? No.
Jean, we're going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful question and something I really wrestle with because I think we're living in a world that is increasingly adaptive. It's complex. As I said before, like there's a really deep importance for relevancy, like it really mattered that we shifted during the pandemic to address the issues that students were facing, and we are continuing to do that. And I think that we live in a state where there's a perception and I don't like to use these words together because I don't think they should go together, but that accountability is standardized testing, and we have a heavy emphasis on content that is not about deeper learning or connected learning, but simply about regurgitation of facts. And that primarily comes from our business leaders in the state. So I think there's a real disconnect because I don't actually think that's what business wants. Because at every one of our schools, we have industry committees that work really closely with us on curriculum. And that is the opposite of what they're telling us they want. They do not want command and control. They do not want hierarchy. They do not want standardization or compliance. They want creativity. They want deeper learning. They want connected learning that relates to the real world. And so something has happened in the statewide policy arena where they've completely lost the thread of what matters in learning and what matters to industry, who is essentially the biggest consumer of education. To be fair, it's really about talent, right? So I totally agree with you. I don't think this is actually a partisan issue. I think it is an issue of translation, right? Of what we need to have happening in the schools, and then how do we measure that? And personally, at our schools, we say, don't worry about that. Focus on this as much as we can in this environment. And we track our students longitudinally because we say, our mission is maximize the option for young people and transform teaching and learning. And we judge our success on economic mobility and how our students do, whether it's in a job or whether it's in school, over time. And we are as concerned about the students who don't go to college as those who go to college, because those are the students in San Antonio that we are failing. Because with our focus on college, there's going to be times when, for whatever reason, they may be academically prepared, they are not going to go to college, but they need to be prepared for a career that's going to give them a stepping stone, and they need to be prepared for life. And so sometimes it actually just requires the courage of saying, these are the state rules, we do have to meet them at some point, but we are not going to make them the be all end all. We know what matters for kids, and if they come down and tell us you're so bad, well, so be it. Thank you for the question. It's a really deep, perceptive, and it is a really existential challenge in education, I think.
Can I add to that?
Please, Jim.
First of all, full disclosure, I think she is brilliant on many things. That challenge, one thing I do disagree with you with when you say it's not industry's fault, it is industry's fault, and it's government's fault. It is not teachers' fault. And it is the same problem that we have across the country, but you're 100% right on translation. Back when I was a lowly industry guy, I would get invited to sit on these education panels. And it would happen where you were in many of them. They start by taking 20 minutes to introduce everybody. Everybody does a 20-minute introduction of how great they are. Then somebody stands up and starts talking about crosswalking a curriculum. I have no idea what crosswalking a curriculum means, nor do I care. So we say, sounds good, do this. Then the politicians, who are lovely people, I know several of them and I love every one of them, wants to scale everything. And they don't want to do anything unless it is absolutely at scale. But you can't scale anything until you've prototyped it and tested it, right? I think that's science. But what we have in this country is some idea, half-baked, where we're going to do the same thing we've always done. We're going to scale it, but we're not going to provide any of the resources to do it. This is not a teacher's problem. This is industry and government's problem. So here is my simple suggestion to fix a problem that I can't solve. Prototype some of these. Do it at a scale where it is small and you are outside of the area. CAST has done a wonderful job on that. Believe it or not, the DoD has done a wonderful job in some occasions. I've got my problems with the DoD, but they have their problems with me. But do it in a way that shows that it works. And then replicate it, and then replicate it again. And what happens magically is everybody will claim credit for it and jump onto it. But to be honest, as an industry guy, I will acknowledge that I am 33% of the problem. Politicians are 33% of the problem. And then I don't know who the rest of it is. I guess it's the bureaucrats who create these education. Because I still don't know what crosswalking a curriculum is, and I hope that nobody ever tells me.
I just want to, I agree. I agree. But I also think the other challenge is that so many things we do in education are not responsive to local conditions on the ground. So to the scalability and replicability, yes, but make sure that it is responsive to local and regional. So for example, CAST was designed to respond to regional economic. Our economy in San Antonio is not the same as Austin's or Dallas's or the Valley's. And so it's really important that the things we do in education have deep ties to the local community. So I agree, but I would add that.
We have another question online and another one here in the room. So from online we have, given the political climate and the age of conspiracy and misinformation that leads to distrust of science, how do you educate and inspire kids that live in these kinds of environments?
Wow, that's a good one. We're going to let Allison start with distrust of science and what do we do? How do we educate kids to be critical thinkers?
An important part is to focus on the masses. So there's so often that kind of like, oh, there's this one person in the room that's not paying attention right now. Let me focus all my energy on them and trying to get them to listen. You know, if I have all of you here with me, let me focus on getting you where I need you to be from that educational perspective. And then if that's all well and good, like let me give energy to those two stragglers. But I think it's important, again, to focus on those people you can get to walk alongside you and less energy on those few that you will never get to walk alongside you. And it's okay to not win over 100% of the people because that's life. And I think science is the same way. We're never going to get 100% adoption of any initiative, no matter how clear the science is. There are always going to be dissenters, non-believers, and that's okay. It'd be a very boring world if we all just were like, yeah, everything's beautiful and amazing. But it is. No, it's beautiful and amazing. So yes, focusing on who you can get to walk alongside you, and again, saving any leftover energy for the dissenters to try to bring them along. But again, that main focus being on those that you can help.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to it?
Yeah, I think one thing is don't ever tell somebody trust the science. Explain why. I remember in 1976, as a ugly young kid, I went up to the flight deck of a Western Airlines 720, Denver to Newark, and I asked the question, how do you know where you're going? And the pilot said to me, I'm just following that road. Even as a 6-year-old kid, I knew that was wrong. But once he explained how they actually did it, I was much more willing to understand. It actually launched really my interest in aviation and signals and everything else. Trust people to be smarter. And one of the problems I think we have within the industry world, the technology world, is we don't give people the credit of being able to listen. If somebody comes up and they're completely nutty, they may be completely nutty, but it may be an opportunity to explain to them how the science works, what it is. But if you just say, trust the science, trust me, I know better, you are playing right into what the crazy people want you to do. And they'll put their crazy theories up and explain it. Watch a flat earth video sometime. It is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diako Ibrahimi. I'm a faculty at Texas Biomed. So I have a challenging question for the panel. So up until a few years ago, when younger generation asked me what they should do in future, my quick response and simple response was that just follow your passion. If you do something passionately, you'll make money out of it. But we all know with all the advancement of AI that we have, many of these jobs that kids will be passionate about, are passionate about, won't exist in future. So what would be your recommendation to new generation?
I don't know if I totally agree with that assessment, but I think that what we try to help young people do is find the combination of what they're passionate about and what they're good at. There are some things that I'm good at that I don't really like, and vice versa. So I don't think it's just about finding your passion. I think it's about really intentional exploration of what the world has to offer, and then trying to match that against what your gifts and talents are, and then what really excites you. So I don't think it's Color Your Rainbow or whatever that 1970s book was, but I think it's more of a complex world we live in, and so it has to be a more complex conversation, but it still is that sort of guided exploration, exposure to the opportunities. And then I would go back to one of my original points is I think what makes human beings different is that we can engage like this, we can make things with our hands, there are certain things that it's going to be, at least not in my lifetime, that AI is going to be doing for us. Artists are an example, and I want to make I run career-themed high schools, by the way, so this is going to sound weird, but I want to make a little bit of a plug for the humanities. Our schools are actually very well-rounded, right, Audrey? And we integrate, we do project-based learning, so you're still doing the humanities, even though you might be doing a project that involves health on the south side. And I think that the skills of communication, of public speaking, of presentation, these are the top skills we hear the industry wants. They want technical skills. They want students to know about health or coding or things they want all of those things. But they also want people who can empathize and who can connect and who can work in teams. That isn't going away anytime soon. And so I think there's so much opportunity for young people. I think that AI, like the internet, is a tool. It's way more complex than the internet, but we figured out a way to work with that. And I don't think we should be afraid of AI. I think we should think about it as something that we will learn alongside. And I think that kind of optimistic positivity is what we need to present to young people too, not a scarcity mindset that jobs are going away, but how do we harness the power of these tools to create all kinds of interesting new opportunities.
Anybody else?
We agree.
Sure, we agree. I don't know what to tell people. I know when I was a kid, people told me half the jobs would be gone by the time I was old. They're not. My parents, I'm sure, were told the same thing. Everybody will find something to be scared of in the future, and it always works out. What it's going to be, I don't have the first clue. I probably won't be around for it because I'm in horrible shape, but maybe y'all can help me.
I wanted to echo what Jean was saying about guided exploration. I won't echo about being not in good health, hopefully. You also, as a clinician, you look incredibly good health, as a sidebar. But to talk about guided exploration and what that means for finding your passion. So you can't, be passionate about something you've never heard of. So again, echoing that it's important that we have these exposures and these opportunities that Jim is talking about in schools like Jean runs, that we really allow people to see the full breadth of what they could be passionate about. I think also helps as we, like Jean was saying, learn alongside AI and learn to incorporate it into whatever role we end up choosing.
Thank you. So Jim brought up different songs and groups and everything, and this all brings me back to that rather old song, "It Only Takes a Spark to Get a Fire Going." And that's what we're talking about here, even at grassroots level, young kids. I remember, time is up. I just saw that. Okay. I don't remember anything. We have to be a spark. Hey, it's all on us. We can look around us. We can find opportunities to encourage people to open up experiences to young people. If they haven't seen it, how can they imagine what they could do with it, whatever it is? And some children live in very small worlds, but our communities are huge, and we can reach out and provide opportunities. My favorite thing is I get Girl Scouts to come into an automotive dealership and show them all the jobs in there that they've never imagined. They didn't lie awake, unable to go to sleep because they're thinking, one day I want to fix cars. I want to do all the electronics on them, because they didn't know about it. We have to show them what the different opportunities are. So just like leaders in our communities are doing for large groups of young people, we need to encourage each other to do it for anybody we see, as well as do what Dr. Wiesenthal talked about in encouraging people that we work with, helping them through to the next step. So we appreciate all of you being here today. Thank you to each of our panelists. Thank you to Texas Biomed for presenting this entire symposium. We know we've kept you long, but lunch is waiting. So you can go get your lunch, and while we're enjoying that, we can continue the conversation. So thank you for being with us here today.